Hey guys, it's Miss Elise. I know it's everybody's favorite from Justin Bieber, right? Guys are rolling their eyes right now. We are learning about flowers today, and so we're going to be talking about reproduction and how plants make babies. So I thought it'd be fun to hear some music. On that note, I wanted to show you a picture of my baby. I got a sonogram the other day, so I know my kids will be excited. But here is a picture sonogram, and you can see that the baby is waving, got a little hand up in the air saying hi, hi. um, got a big old head like his dad or her dad. We don't know if it's a boy or girl yet. And if you don't believe me, here's a picture of my husband. Okay. He made fun of me last week. He deserves to have this picture up. Plus, okay, got to kind of cut him a break. He was trying to make his Wella laugh, his grandmother. In that picture, I cut her out because she'd kill me. But you don't want a Mexican on your bad side, let me tell you that. Anyway, so he was trying to make her laugh, so that's why he was making that face. But he deserves it after last week, I think. All right, let's start our flower structure notes. All right, so a couple weeks ago, we went over the basics of the flowers. Some of you are missing it on your notes. So obviously the flower is pretty and scented so that it can attract pollinators, like bees or humans, birds, depends on the flower. Some of them stink. There's a corpse flower that smells like a rotting body. So that one is trying to attract other pollinators like flies, so that maybe they would pollinate. I'm definitely not going to be the human that goes up and sniffs that. Ugh. Okay, so the major thing that plants do is they're there for reproduction. I mean, that's exactly what it's there for. All right, so the key for this is they are making babies, little plant babies, or otherwise known as seeds. And so flowers are very important. So when you see a bush flowering or a tree and flowers come out, and oh, they're so pretty and they smell so good, they are saying, let's make a baby. All right, so really important. So the flower, obviously the petals is going to protect. It protects the female and male organs for reproduction. But yes, that's exactly what the flower is for reproduction. So there are a lot of parts. I am not requiring you to know all of them, but there are a lot of parts for a plant, a flower. So just going to kind of go down here. The first things you just really need to understand about a flower is some flowers have both male and female parts. So a flower could actually self-pollinate, and that's a common misconception. It's still sexual. If a plant pollinates itself, it's still sexual reproduction because the male gamete, sex cell, is hitting a female gamete, sex cell. And anytime a female and male gamete come together, that is sexual reproduction. So even if a flower pollinates with itself, that is sexual reproduction. Some flowers are going to prevent themselves from self-pollinating because if a flower pollinates itself, it's not going to get as much genetic variation. And remember, we like genetic variation because it drives evolution. So some flowers have adaptations to prevent themselves. So some flowers the female part will not produce, the male part will produce, and then the male parts will stay producing pollen, male gametes, for a while, and then those will go away, and then the female part will pop up. So some of them have adaptations to prevent themselves from self-pollination. All right, so what are the parts? All right, so usually this is where the kids have no clue. So pollen is the yellow stuff in the flower, okay? That is like the plant sperm. That's the male gamete of the plant. So when you go up and sniff a flower and you get some of that little yellow dusty stuff on your nose, you're basically getting like plant sperm all over your nose, okay? It's also what's flowing through the wind that's making us all have allergies because we're breathing in pollen constantly. So you're constantly exposed to plant gametes, okay? The male gamete. So that is the male gamete. The female gamete's kind of hidden. It's usually at the base of the flower. And so the pollen will somehow attach, and then the pollen makes a pollen tube down. So, but the key that you need to understand, there are two parts in plant reproduction. So there's the male parts. All right, so the male parts are these. This would be the male organ right here. Okay, and this whole thing right here is called the stamen. Okay, so that's what this box is. If you're doing this on your phone, I don't think double clicking the boxes is working for y'all on your phone. So I apologize. You may have to try to find another way to do it. If you do it on the computer, it kind of works, but I know some kids have said on their phone it doesn't. All right, so the stamen is the male reproductive organ. Now, the way I remember that is I remember this part right here, men. Okay? And men reminds me that that's the male reproductive part. So stamen is the male reproductive organ. And so its purpose is to actually make the pollen, which, remember, the pollen is the male gamete or sex cell of the flower. So if you scroll back down here, you've got the stamen, and down here, this little stem part that holds it up, that's called the filament. I already gave you that, and you don't even have to describe it at the top. And then this part up here that produces, that holds the pollen, that is called, sorry, we're going to put pollen there because that's where the pollen is held, is on the anther. So I always think antlers are only on male deer, okay? And so this is the top of a stamen, and it produces the pollen. So all that yellow stuff on the anthers is the pollen. And if you recall, the pollen, which is found at the top of the stamen, is the male plant gamete. It's the male sex cell. That's what pollen is. So it's a sex cell. So the stamen is this whole thing, and it produces the pollen, and the pollen is the sex cell. So it's like little plant sperm. All on top of these right here are little plant sperm. All right, very good. So the stamen is going to release the pollen, and then the pollen is either going to be carried by wind, the wind's going to blow it, gravity, it drops to the ground or in the same flower. Animals can come over like us, sniff it, and we get pollen on our noses, or even insects like bees or flies will come over, get it on their legs, and then they're going to fly to another flower, and some of that pollen is going to drop off, and so that's called pollination. All right, so once we get the pollen on top, so again, here's the anthers, it makes the pollen, and you can fertilize your own flower. So sometimes another adaptation is that the female part will stick up really high, and then the anthers, the male stamen, is down here. So that keeps it from pollinating itself. That's another adaptation. So this flower is actually showing our female part a little bit lower, so it could pollinate itself. And this whole thing that looks like a vase, okay, is the female part. So you can see it again over here. It looks like a vase. It kind of, is the top, and then it's real skinny, and then it gets real big at the bottom. So that would be, this whole thing right here is called the pistil or carpel. I've heard it both ways. I usually call it a pistil, but the pistil, I just remember, if I'm being sexist, but most females are going to carry a gun. It's going to be a pistol, little pistol. So that's kind of how I remember it. They're not going to walk around with a shotgun. I mean, I guess they could, again, to each their own. But most women are going to carry a pistol just because it's a little bit smaller and not as much kickback. But so that's how I remember it. The female is the pistol and the male is the stamen. So your pistol is the female reproductive organ. It's like the opposite of the stamen. And it's going to actually make the ovules. And the ovules, you guessed it, are the female gametes, the female sex cell. So if we look over here, down here, and over here, you've got this vase looking thing. So they're kind of shaped different depending on what picture I'm looking at. But, and you don't have to know this, but the top is the stigma and it's sticky. It's where the pollen sticks to, okay? Stigma. And then you're going to have style, because females, we always have style, right? So stigma is sticky, and then style, and then ovaries are down at the bottom. So let me kind of do my little dance for you. Let me stand up here. Okay. So stigma, style, ovaries, okay? And so those are the three basic parts of the female reproductive organ. So now I didn't really have you memorize stigma up here, but this is where the stigma would be. And then this part right here is the style. Get on this one, stigma is at the top. Style is the long skinny part. And then down here, the big base of the pistil is the ovary. And so this would be the ovary down here. And just like female ovaries, just like our ovaries, that's where we actually store our egg, okay? Or eggs, plural. So we store our eggs in our ovary, and so do plants. So this is the ovary. And then the little bitty looking things in there. So this one over here looks like it has like 9 of them. And this one looks like it has 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So those are actually the ovules. Ovules, okay? They're like an egg, okay? They are the female part. So the ovary is found at the bottom, can't type today, of the pistil or carpel, depending on what you want to call it, and stores the ovules, okay? Which again, remember, is the sex cell of the female sex cell. And then the ovules are found at the bottom of the pistil inside the ovary. Okay, and again, this is the female gamete of the plant. And remember, gamete just means sex cell. And I cannot type today. Doing terrible. All right, so those are the ovules. So ovules are tiny. So ovary, ovules. All right, so here's the cool part. Once the pollen, which is on the stamen, lands on the stigma, which is the sticky part, it forms a pollen tube. So here's a great example. You have your pollen grain, which is a little yellow thing. It's going to form a pollen tube, and those little plant sperm are going to travel down the pollen tube all the way around the ovary into the bottom where there's an opening, and then it's going to fertilize that ovule. So in this picture, this female reproductive organ, this pistil, only has 1 ovule in there. Over here we have couple. So this one, the sperm is going to fertilize it. Once the little plant sperm hits the plant egg and they unite, then now we have fertilization, okay? And we're going to make a little plant baby. And the plant baby looks different than a human baby because it is a seed. That's what a seed is it's the plant baby. So this plant should make about 8 seeds because that's how many ovules you have. This one should make about 9. Now it depends on what flower you're talking about. Some flowers like an avocado, makes one ginormous seed on the inside of the avocado. Apples make maybe 5, 6, 7 seeds. Oranges, about the same. And then you get to some things like watermelon where you're going to get tons of seeds. So it depends on what plant you're talking about. Now, if you just caught on, my favorite part. So if I didn't ruin pollen for you already, sniffing in all that plant sperm, when you eat fruit, okay, anytime you eat around a seed, that is the ovary. So you are taking a big old chunk out of the ovary. So what plants have done is they have this adaptation where after they have been pollinated and their ovules turn into seeds, then the ovary is going to become the fruit, the fleshy fruit. And this adaptation is to help the seeds get carried away from the mama plant because we don't want to fight over resources. Water, sunlight, soil. We don't want to fight over any of that. So we want the baby, the seed, to be carried away from the mama. And so that's what the little fruit does, is a bear will walk up and eat a whole apple. The seeds will go through his digestive system. They have a strong enough casing so that they don't get broken up in his digestive system. And then when he walks away and he goes to the bathroom, the seeds are in there and that's fertilizer. So now we can grow a new apple plant, okay? Apple tree. And so you are eating the female reproductive part when you eat a fruit. So I know I'm ruining it for you. So what's the difference between a fruit and a vegetable? Well, a fruit is going to be when you're eating around the seed or any part of the seed, like a strawberry, the seeds are on the outside, but that's still a fruit. Okay, a vegetable is going to be something where you're technically not eating anything that has to do with the seed. So like potatoes, they're underground, they're parts of the roots and stem, not the seed, so it's a vegetable. Carrots are a root, so vegetable. So as long as it's not part of the seed. So that's kind of how they distinguish fruit and vegetables. It's kind of why everybody thought a tomato was a vegetable, but technically it's a fruit because you're eating around or eating the seeds of a tomato. So it is a fruit. So just a little bit of, okay. All right, so going back to our last two, which are the easiest, and that is the petal and the sepal. So I hope you know that these bright colored things are the petals of the plant. So over here on this flower, they're big and purple, and then on your notes, they're kind of yellowish. All right, so these are our petals right there. And what is the purpose of a petal? Well, it's colored. Usually smells good, but it is the colored outer portion of the flower, and it usually has some scent to it. And so why would we have bright colors and scent? Well, of course, to attract pollinators. We want them to come to this flower and help us pollinate because that's how we reproduce, right? All right, so remember reproduction, we're making babies. All right, so the last one is the sepal, and it is down here at the very bottom. Usually when y'all notice the sepal, it's because it's right before the flower blooms. It's kind of the green casing around the flower. And then you start to see the petals come out. And so what will happen is that green protective casing actually curls up and goes down. And so it hangs out underneath the petals. So prior to the flower opening up, the sepal just kind of protects it, and even below it, it protects it. So it's the green outer portion which protects the flower. Very good. So, here are some pictures of some seeds, some babies. So sunflower seeds come from a sunflower. Lots of sunflower seeds come from a sunflower. All different kinds. All right, so that is it for flower reproduction. I hope you learned something, and I hope I didn't ruin fruit for you. For plants. But just remember that we're making babies.